Obaidullah Mehak worked for a foreign-funded human rights group in the Afghan capital, Kabul. That made him a target for the Taliban, so Mehak fled, eventually by boat to Australia. He arrived before Australia began sending refugees to prisons in other countries. But without the right to work in Australia and with no indication of if or when he'll get formal recognition as a refugee, Mehak feels his life is in limbo.
I don't think security and safety is only physical. I think we have mental security and mental safety as well, which has been compromised.
Human Rights Watch agrees. The charity says it's seriously concerned by Australia's treatment of refugees and the government's response to criticism. Human Rights Watch questions whether Australia is ready to become a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Clearly, Australia has a lot of work to do. If it's going to sit on the human rights body, then it needs to address some of the concerns of the UN rather than simply brushing these concerns aside.
In March, the United Nations said sending refugees to what are effectively prisons in Papua New Guinea and Nauru contravened an international convention against torture and degrading treatment. Australia's then Prime Minister dismissed the criticism, saying he was sick of being lectured to. The government also launched a scathing attack on its own Human Rights Commissioner when she criticised locking up refugee children. Human Rights Watch says Australia has ignored abuses in other countries too. To stop Sri Lankan refugees like these Tamils from coming, Australia did a deal with Sri Lanka, encouraging it to take back refugees and donating patrol boats to stop people leaving.
Australia has seemed to be quite prepared to be silent on human rights abuses in order to get support from the Sri Lankan government on people smuggling issues. It's very disappointing when the Australian government basically backs the Sri Lankan regime and goes against international human rights standards.
The report accuses Australia of turning a blind eye to human rights abuses in countries with which it shares border protection efforts or with which it has key trade relationships. The UN's Human Rights Council does have existing members like China and Saudi Arabia with dubious human rights records. But Human Rights Watch says Australia should aspire to better, that it should use prospective membership as a catalyst to get its own house in order. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Sydney.